for the unveiling the mask, and I'm so excited to be here because Megillas Esther literally means revealing the hidden, because Megale means to reveal, Megillah is to Megale, the reveal, and Esther comes from hidden. Her name wasn't actually Esther. Esther's name originally was Hadassah. She was like a myrtle. She was a myrtle flower. Oh, I brought a mask. And so there it is. And her name, Hadassah, Esther was her second name because she hid herself. She hid her identity. So much so that Achashverosh tried every which way, thank you, Sarah, to encourage, to get Esther to reveal who she was and who her identity, who her family was, where she came from. And everything he did, he made feasts in her honor. He took off taxes in her name. He named things after her. He made parties in her honor. And then he even gathered the woman a second time to make her jealous, to convince her to tell him. The second gathering of women was actually Mordechai's intention. He said, what do I do? This woman won't tell me who she is. I want to know more about her. And he said, well, nothing speaks to one more than other, like the being jealous of another woman. So gather all the women again, and then maybe, in her ploy to have you, be hers only, she will tell you. But that didn't work either. All right, so the first thing that I would like to talk about today is a beautiful portrayal of the Esther's metamorphosis throughout the Megillah, and I love to follow Esther throughout the Megillah and see this transformation that Esther has through her suffering. So we have a pasuk in Parshah Tetzaveh, which I believe is this week's Parsha. Right, it is this week's Parsha. The first pasuk in this week's Parsha, V'ata Tetzaveh b'nei Yisrael v'yiklei lecha shemen zayis kasas l'ma'or. Hashem tells Moshe that people should bring him olive oils to light the menorah in the Beis Mikdash. Kasas, the words that the Rebbe has in the last mimer, actually, of the Rebbetzin Rebbe, was a Purim mimer about this pasuk. And he teaches that kasas l'ma'or, what does it mean? Take the olives crushed for lighting. That when how do we get the purest olive oil from olives? When we crush them, when we squeeze them. And he says, so too is our journey. We have the same journey, and Esther had the same journey. Every neshama has this journey where we are like the olive, that we come down into this world, we have a descent, we're squeezed throughout the struggles of living in this world, and through being squeezed, through our challenges, through being pressed into uncomfortable situations, what comes out of us is the greatest light. That often we can't get to the olive oil, to that light that's pure, that light that shines so bright, unless the olive is squeezed. And often a person needs to be squeezed so that their greatest light can come out of them. Otherwise, it's going to be dormant inside of them, hidden inside of them forever without being revealed. And this is really Esther's journey as well in this week's Parsha. In the Megillah, we follow Esther, and I invite you to look at the sources and to see how Esther began as a meek individual without being a follower. Esther was a lot of a follower, and we see this story of this timid Esther who is frightened and does whatever others tell her. Then we continue Parak Beis in the Megillah, that when it was Esther's turn, she didn't ask for anything other than what Haggai told her to do, other than what Asher Haggai says to Melech Nashim, Yomer Haggai says to Melech, right? She did whatever Haggai told her to do. She's like, I don't know, you tell me and I'll do what you say, right? We have a few psukim later in Beis Chaf, in the Megillas Esther, Esther ein Esther Megillas Meladita Ves'ama Kasher Tziva Aleha Mordechai, right? This is the deep verse that describes the Esther before the challenges. That Esther is not divulging her identity like Mordechai commanded her. And then the pasuk continues and tells us a lot about Esther. It says, "Ves'maimra Mordechai Esther Isa," and whatever Mordechai tells her, Esther does. Kasher Haisa ba'amnaita, just like when she was under his tutelage. We're saying this is the same Esther. Before, when she was living in his house, she did everything he told her. She didn't really seem to have her own opinions, or she wasn't expressing her own opinions. She was doing what Mordechai said. And here she continues to be that way. So we see this Esther painted as a shy, timid, or somebody who doesn't really have a lot of initiative and is willing to follow the instructions of her leader, of her husband, Mordechai. Then we see this transformation. So that is the old Esther. Now, once Esther is crushed, and this is once Esther goes through this tragic story, and many people ask, why are we even celebrating Purim? Esther had to live forever with Achashverosh, and there's a lot of tragedy, and not everyone understands the tragedy of Esther's personal life and the sacrifice that Esther made. And this is one of the big reasons that the Megillah is called on Esther and her name, even though the story at the beginning speaks about Mordechai a lot, and Mordechai was involved in it, and Esther was just one individual, but the whole Megillah is not called Esther and Mordechai, it's called Megillah's Esther, and that's something we're going to talk about today and try to understand why it's specifically only called Megillah's Esther, not anyone else. And there's a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is that she's the one who had to live with it for the rest of her life. The Gemara tells us a few things. The Gemara in Megillah, Gemara has a whole Masechta dedicated to Megillah's Esther. And the Gemara Megillah, I believe it's page 13, goes through, it tells us that Esther was actually married to Mordechai. It says that he was in Besa, he was her house, and Besa, someone's house is the home is their wife. And Esther and Mordechai were married, and they loved each other deeply. So when Esther was taken, the Gemara says something crazy that I've never heard before. I'm going to read you the words. The Gemara says, she would get up from the bosom, from the lap, from sitting on Achashverosh's lap, toveles, go to the mikvah, and go home to Mordechai. This is the opinion that says she was married to Mordechai, that she was not consenting to be with Achashverosh. She did not want to be with him. She loved her husband, and because it was unconsensual, she was halachically allowed to still be with her husband because it was considered rape. So she was non-consensually being with Achashverosh. This is a crazy term. Wait a sec. It was considered rape, so therefore, if she was not consenting to it, she was allowed to go back to Mordechai. But there's a halacha that if a woman marries another woman, if a woman is married and she marries another man willingly, then she can never go back to her husband. That's the halacha. But because it was unconsensual, the Gemara says that she would go back and go from the lap of Achashverosh, go to the mikvah, and then go sit in Mordechai's lap. So this was a really, can you imagine someone being taken from the love of life, being forced to be raped constantly at Achashverosh's whim, be in a life that she didn't want to, begging Hashem to save her. And here is a beautiful, heart-wrenching tefillah that we learn in Tehillim. I believe I brought you this in one of the last sources. In Tehillim, Perek Kaf Beis, it's the last source. Eli, Eli, lama azaftani rachaik mishuasi divrei shagasi. There's a pasuk in Tehillim that says, my God, why have you abandoned me? Why so far from delivering me and from my anguished roaring? All the Midrashim say that this Tehillim, this was written by Esther. This was the cry of Esther. When she came into the palace, she cried out, Eli, where are you? Now just says, why did she call out to Hashem, where are you? Lama Zatani, where did you go? Because Esther was one of the 7 women who was blessed with Nevuah, divine, she got to have divine revelation. And when she entered the palace, because there was Avodah Zarah, the Shechina left her. So she said, where did my Shechina go? Where's my revelation? Where's my Ruach HaKodesh? So she said, Eli. She called out, Hashem, where are you? And Hashem didn't answer her. And she called it again, Eli, where are you? And the third time, this is what the Medrash says, the third time she says, Keli, lama azaftani, why have you abandoned me? Where have you gone? Right? Rachok mishuasi, where's my salvation? Divrei shagasi, you hear me roaring and calling to you, my pain. Where are you? Why have you abandoned me? This is something I've never heard. And this is Esther feeling crushed to her very core, just calling out to Hashem without anything else to do, saying, where are you gone? And the Medrash continues and says that she was saying, why have you abandoned me? What do you mean she didn't have faith? She said that all the other imahais who were in my situation, when they were taken by a king against their will, you went to save them. When Sarah was taken by Paro, or Avimelech, was it Paro? Sarah was taken by Avimelech or Paro? By both? No, Rivka and Sarah were both taken by Avimelech and Paro. And when they were taken against their will, Hashem didn't let them touch her, and he punished the whole household because he touched her without permission. She said, where's my nace? Where's my salvation? Why aren't you coming to save me? Where's my miracle? Why are you letting this man touch me over and over again? Why are you letting this happen to me? What's my destiny, right? She's a young girl who has hopes and dreams of building a Jewish family, of building a home that she wants to build. All her hopes and dreams are taken away from her. So in that tragedy that she's in, Esther turns it around. And from this tragedy, she realizes that obviously Hashem has come. So of course she struggles and she's in pain, and she calls out to Hashem and says, where are you? Why have you abandoned me? And through this, Esther grows to come to realize that Hashem has put her here for a reason, not without struggle, not without pushback, not without this real human-like struggle that we see that Esther went through and said, I don't want to be here, right? I didn't ask for this. But eventually Esther decides not to victimize herself and to say, obviously if Hashem put me here, there's a reason. And Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson put it in this like perspective that I heard that was like, imagine somebody, a woman was chosen by Hitler, right? Yamach Shemo, to be with him, and she knows that by being with him, she could maybe stop the Holocaust and save the lives of millions of innocent Jewish babies, right? So she can either be, it's a horrible tragedy for somebody to be taken and raped, a Jewish girl to be raped with Hitler, but at the end of the day, she can choose to be a victim, or she can say, I'm going to change the face of humanity forever, right? And so she decided not to stay in the victim mode and to say, like, this is happening to me. Why is this happening to me? Make it stop happening to me. Like we talk about a lot in our classes, that pain is inevitable, right? But suffering is something that we can affect. We can affect the level of our suffering, right? Pain happens to us. And I've recently learned in life that I've been fighting pain my whole life, right? When things happen to me that are challenging, I spend a lot of time like making it stop, or trying to make it go away, or like fighting with like why it's happening to me, or like really struggling with it. In every situation, right? Anytime something is difficult. And recently I've come to like a place, not always, sometimes I'm able to get to this place and just say, you know what? Pain is part of life, right? Pain is something that is a part, it's something that we can't avoid. And who said pain is bad, right? Maybe this pain is going to lead me to something greater, right? When somebody can't feel pain at all, that's also a curse, right? So I'm like, I'm blessed to be human. I'm blessed to be alive. I'm blessed to feel the range of my feelings. I'm blessed to feel pain. And this is something that's going to take me somewhere higher. So I kind of not welcome the pain, but I stop fighting it. And I'm just like, the pain is here. It's not the end of the world. I feel pain. All the people feel pain, and we get over it, right? So this is the pain. So not fighting the pain eases a lot of the suffering, because I just like, there's a suffering mindset that's like, I can't deal with this pain, right? I'm gonna die. I have so much, I can't handle it. Rather than just saying like, okay, so I have pain, right? I'll be fine. I can handle it. For me, that was like a huge release of suffering. But even more than that, suffering, we talk a lot in this class about shifting when painful things happen to us, because they do. And we go through tremendous, immense challenges, like not even, even close to the ones that Queen Esther did, that we can, at the point of when we our suffering eases, is when we change the victim mindset, when we stop saying, when we change the question from why is this happening to me, what can I do to make this go away, to understanding that this is intentional, that to shifting focus and saying the words, the magic words that change my life. What message is in this for me? What jewels are in this for me? What blessings are in this for me? What growth is in this for me? Because everything that's happening to me, there's a reason for it. There's something I can take from it. So what can I take from this situation? It's happening to me intentionally, and the focus shifts. When the focus shifts from how do I make this stop and why is this happening to me and I just can't do this, to how can I use this as an opportunity, as a stepping stone to gain something from this, to utilize this opportunity, to utilize this even though it's painful, and it is painful and it's horrible and I don't want it to be here, but it is here. So let me take something from it. Let me gather and let me dig deep and find the jewels, find the growth, find the oil in this squeezing, right? What's the oil that's going to come out from crushing these olives, right? So at some point in Esther's journey, and some point in Esther's suffering, we see Esther take charge of her situation and no longer be a victim to the situation, but sees the opportunity to say, okay, obviously Hashem put me here, right? Hashem didn't forsake me. Hashem is not helping me, so he must have want me to be here, and there's something great I can do here, and I'm going to find that. I'm going to look for that path. And through this crushing, and this is something I observed in the Megillah a few years ago, and I haven't seen this written anywhere, but for me, like, it changed my life to look at and to analyze Esther's personality from before she went through this suffering that she went through, before this tragedy, where she was at the rock bottom, in this horrible state and plight, to the Esther that emerges after. And for me, it was like a clear example of someone being squeezed when she's put in this pressure cooker, when she's squeezed and oppressed. This potential that was in her that would never have came out. She would have been following Mordechai's instructions for the rest of her life, living a peaceful existence, and never known this true strength of her, the potential inside of her, the strength that she had, the fact that she can save millions of Jews, or I don't know how many Jews were saved, but in fact, it says that the whole Jewish nation wouldn't have survived without her, because they were instructed to kill. It was literally a day of killing. The king commanded to kill every single Jew, mother, baby, father, to wipe out the Jewish nation. And Esther saved the Jewish nation through Hashem's help. So we see this transformation, and now when we go afterwards, suddenly we see this new. So we analyzed Esther before as being someone who follows instructions, who doesn't take initiative. Then suddenly this challenge happens, and then suddenly we see this different Esther come, a totally different Esther that emerges, that comes out, this Megala, this revelation of who is this Esther, right? So Esther hears that Mordechai about the decree, and she hears that Mordechai is dressed in sackcloth, and she says, no, like, that's not how we're going to fight this. And she sends instructions to, this is in your sources, right? Vatikra Esther lahasach, right? She calls Hasach, one of the chamberlains, and she commands him, right? This is a commanding Esther. This is her first time taking her power and making decisions and saying, I'm going to be in charge of my situation. I'm going to utilize and take what take the meaning, and find the meaning, and find where Hashem wants from here. That it's a vehu on Mordechai, and she commanded him to command Mordechai to say, why are you doing this? And Mordechai tells her what's going on, and that he has sackcloth, and she tell him, right, to remove his sackcloth. And Mordechai refuses, and Mordechai says no, and Esther sends again and says to listen to her, and Mordechai then listens to her. So he sees, like, oh wow, this is a different Esther. This is not the Esther that that didn't have her self revealed. This is a totally different Esther that's coming out. Something like was cracked out of her. When she's cracked, right, things can leak forth. Her light is coming out. So, but not without struggle. So they told. So Mordechai said, this is why you are here. You have to go before the king. And it's not like we have this perfect heroine that was like, yes, I will sacrifice my life. She said, he's going to kill me. I don't want to go. I'm afraid. And to me, that's like such a testament to like the fact that we can all relate to that Esther. That's not like, oh, like this. I'm like, I can't relate to that, right? Someone's like, you could go sacrifice your life. Yes, I will do it, right? Of course there's fear. We can relate to the humanity in Esther, the fear inside of her. She's saying, he hasn't called me in 30 days and he's going to kill me, right? I'm going to come out a head shorter from his palace. And when Mordechai said, he said that we'll be saved either way, but why do you think you're here? So Esther, I guess, internalized this and realized this is what she has to do, fear or not fear, and she was able to overcome it. And then she instructs Mordechai and the whole nation. So we see this Esther that's giving instructions, that's a leader emerging and instructing the entire Jewish nation. She tells Mordechai, this is what you're going to do. You're going to go. She doesn't even ask him. She says, you're going to go and gather all the Jewish people who are in Shushan, and you're going to fast for 3 days, and I'm also going to fast. And then when I go to the king, if I die, I die. Kasher avadati avadati. There's something really sad about these words that say that Esther until then was able to go back and be with her husband Mordechai because she was inconsensually with Achashverosh. But kasher avadati avadati meant that she knew that now I'm going willingly to Achashverosh. So now it's not rape anymore. And then I'm never going to be allowed to be with Mordechai again because I'm willingly going to be with another man. So kasher avadati avadati, I'm going to lose it all. And if I lose it all, I lose it all. She was giving up everything, her beloved, being with someone that she loved and loved her back for the sake of the Jewish nation. She was sacrificing everything. So we see this person with power, this fearless, courageous woman giving up not just her life to be killed, but even if she survives, giving up her love of her life, giving up any real love in her life, and giving up to spend the rest of her life with this man willingly, to be willingly with the man that was raping her, right? And so this was this like tremendous Esther that we did not see before. Like, who is this woman who now feels like she can take on the world and nothing, that she has this courage to do this? Where is she getting the strength from? She's getting the strength from being crushed and being broken and being forced to see the power of her strength and being forced to see how great she was that she never had even known or would never have known. We see one more example. There's many more examples if you can notice this transformation of this different Esther emerging. But the last example I'll bring you is at the end of the Purim story. The miracle happens. This transformation, right? Everything turns around. Haman is killed, and then where is it? Okay, it's in English, so I'm gonna get it in my sources in Hebrew. At the very end, the Esther decided that she wants this to be written down in the Torah, included in the Torah, and she sends it to all the Chachamim, and she says, I want this to be included in the Torah. First of all, throughout the rest of the Megillah, you'll see many examples of Esther commanding the king. She goes before the king. She says, I'm not going to tell you now. I want you to come to a party. And at the party, she says, I'm going to invite you to another party. She is so fearless and powerful and intelligent in executing this plan. She's a different Esther, right? Who is this like brilliant, strategical woman, right? We didn't even know that this existed in Esther. And at the very end of the Megillah, it says, V'tichtav Esther hamalka bas Avichai Mordechai is called, right? They wrote it down. She herself take this and write it down. Looking for the source where she sent it to the Chachamim and she told them to write it down. And the Gemara tells us that they refused to write it down because they said you're going to invoke anti-Semitism. You're going to say that the Jewish people killed all their enemies. None of them got killed, and then they hung Haman on the tree, on the thing. You're just going to cite anti-Semitism. They said, no way, this is not the thing to do. This is going to provoke and trigger the non-Jews. We're not writing it down and publishing it and sending it out to everybody, right? That's the craziest thing we're going to do. And she responded to them that it's so important to write it down again, and she explained why it should be there because it's wiping out Amalek, and the Chachamim returned to her and said that it says that Amalek will be mentioned in the Torah al-Shilashim 3 times, and it was already mentioned 3 times in the Torah. We don't need to mention it again. We're done. And again, she pushed back, and they listened to her, right? This Esther taking her power, they're like, this is Esther, right? We're not messing. This is Esther. They understood that she had, and Mordechai as well didn't feel the need to write it down. Esther insisted, and it became part of the Torah. It is part of the Tanakh. The Megillah Esther is part of Tanakh. So Esther was able to be the one who decided as well. There was also an argument. There was a disagreement between how Purim should be celebrated. Esther wanted it to be celebrated as a day of feasting, a day of celebrating, a day of partying, and Mordechai said it should be a Yom Tif, which should be everyone. They both agreed it should be remembered for generations. But Mordechai said it should be a Yom Tif, like a Shabbos, right? We light candles, we go to shul, and we daven. And Esther insisted that it be a physical partying Yom Tif, and it was obviously the way that Esther did. It should be physical gifts, sending things to your friends, and it ended up going the way of Esther. There's a really beautiful idea that I was going to say later about, I'll share it now, about why Purim is celebrated in such a physical way and not in a spiritual way. But Esther, first of all, we learned that Esther, the Purim story for her was a physical miracle. She physically had to go through it. And Mordechai it was spiritual. He was davening in shul, right? So he experienced the miracle differently. So he wanted to celebrate it differently. For Esther, it was her life. It was a physical life. But we actually learned that Purim, at its essence, is a physical day. And thinking if I should share it now. We'll share it later about why it was shared, why it was celebrated Esther's way in such a physical way. But in the end, we see that this different Esther, who who added a sefer to the Torah. Karen, what were you going to ask?
When I learned this, I learned that Mordechai was advising her, and that all the smart moves that she made and all of her strategies and her chutzpah came from ideas that he had.
That's probably a man's opinion.
I know.
Okay, I'm like, there's one pasuk I didn't say before, but Yavar Mordechai. I love this pasuk. Before it said that Esther does, Karen, you were saying, before it says that Esther does everything that Mordechai instructed her to do, just like she did when she was in his home. And in Perek Dalid, in the fourth Perek of Megillah, it says Vayavor, when Esther instructs him to take the Jewish people to gather them. What does it say? Vayavar Mordechai. So Mordechai went. Vayas kechol asher tzivta alav Esther, and he did everything that Esther commanded him. So we see this complete reversal of roles, right? Where Esther discovered her power, and Mordechai sees this, and he says, okay, this is a different Esther, this is an Esther, even though she had Nevuah before, right? She had Baruch HaKodesh before, and still, she was still following instructions of other people because she hadn't discovered the Kolach in her. And only through going through the struggles that she was in was she able to reveal it with her, and now was she able to come out who she really was and the power of who she really was. And Vayavar Mordechai, and we see that Mordechai did everything that Esther told him, right? And it's just like this completely different Esther, completely different story. You would think it's a different person. And in a personal level, so many times, at least in my life, that I've gone through difficult things where I felt like I was crushed and alone, and why is this happening to me? And really difficult challenges with mental health, with postpartum depression, and many other things that, Baruch Hashem, we've all been through many struggles, and we can all relate. But after the fact, when you come through on the other side, when I come out of the other side, I know that for almost all of my challenges, I think back and I'm like, would I have done it differently? And the answer is almost always no. I wouldn't have taken it back if I could, because the person the me that I am now came out with so much self-knowledge, so much confidence, so much more knowledge of what I'm capable of, and not being afraid now. I'm not so afraid of that happening because I know that I'm able to handle it. I know that I can overcome it, and I know that I'll come out more empathetic. I'll come out with much more of an inner self-worth. I'll come out with a stronger connection to Hashem, right? I'll come out with a stronger, much deeper connection with the people around me, with a deeper empathy, and all the things that I've gained from it, I've only gained because I've been crushed and because when I've been put through the ringer. So if we can look back and acknowledge these things, we can also then look forward. When we go through something, we say, okay, this is tough, but I'm going to come out of this with so much more light than before I was squeezed for the light. So we're going to move on now to talking about, this is something as a feminist that I cannot skip over. Looking at this again, this is the way that I look at the Megillah story through my lens as a feminist, and see this fairy tale, right? This is the fairy tale that we all grew up with. This princess in a palace fairy tale saving the world. And all of us grew up with, I grew up with the Cinderella, Rapunzel, Beauty and the Beast, Snow White, all those stories. And Queen Esther is like the anti-fairy tale story. It takes every fairy tale of princesses that you grew up with, and Queen Esther flips it on his back. And it blows my mind when you really analyze. So I'm a fairy tale analyzer. That's my new job. And I analyze all the Disney princess fairy tales, and I realize that they all have a common thread going through them. They all have a common theme that is such a bad value that I would never want to give to my daughters. God, Baruch Hashem, I'm blessed with daughters. It's just values that I would never want my daughters to have. That you internalize this idea that every fairy tale has a princess, a beautiful girl who's in distress, who's going through a distressful time, who's in a distressful situation. She's a damsel in distress, right? Her evil stepmother or this spell cast on her, right? There's either a spell, a witch, or a stepmother. So that's fine, right? Then we have all of them are saved because all of them, how does their story turn around? Because they're all beautiful. Every one of them is beautiful, right? They're all stunning on the outside, and then a prince comes and saves them. So the message that is so unhealthy and toxic is that their beauty is their biggest asset, because the prince looks at them, she's sleeping, she's not even talking, and he's in love with her. What does he love about her face, right? She's not even awake. So the message is that your external beauty is what's going to get you forward in life, what's going to save you from bad situations, and that you need a prince to come and save you from your distressful situation. So it's teaching our girls that you should always be pretty and look beautiful, because no matter what bad happens, if you're pretty enough and there's a man who's going to come and save you, you'll be fine, right? So it's taking so much power away from us, telling us that just wait for your prince, pray for your prince to come and save you, and then you'll be okay. And it's a message in life that we'll be happy in life when we have a prince that comes and saves us from all of our problems, as long as I'm pretty enough for him. That is such an untoxic, old school message that I would never want to, that I wanted to take out of my brain. Queen Esther's story is the opposite, is the anti-Disney princess fairy tale. Queen Esther is similar. The one thing that's similar is that Queen Esther is a damsel in distress, right? She's in a distressful situation. There's no evil stepfather, but there's a evil king, right? And she's taken against her will, and she's locked up in the palace like Rapunzel and all these other princesses who are locked up in this palace, right? But rather than rely on her physical beauty, rather than say that Esther was so beautiful and that's what saved her, it's actually the opposite story. Esther was anything but beautiful. Okay, so most opinions say that Esther actually was not beautiful. The reason she was called Hadass is because she was average. Her leaves weren't too big, weren't too small. She was very average. And the other opinion says she was Hadass because she was green. Her skin was green. So she was Fiona, Princess Fiona. I guess that's like the more modern day fairy tale, right? She was the green Princess Fiona. I guess it's a better fairy tale, right? The newer ones are getting more at the times. But she is this green woman, and the Chachamim say that it's a miracle that Achashverosh even found her attractive. That there had to be like a nace of angels throwing. It says that there was 3 angels putting grace around her. In the Medrash it says, "Eli Eli lama sabtani, why have you forsaken me?" It says that she was sown with chen and chesed around her so that Achashverosh should find her attractive. The Gemara also says that it was in Teves. Remember when in Teves month we said that Teves is the month that the body enjoys pleasure from the body? I have to staple these up. That we learned this from Achashverosh. He took Queen Esther, he slept with every woman for a night. And the night that was Esther's turn was in Teves when it was really cold, and because she warmed him, he found himself pulled to her even though she was hideous, right? Or even though she wasn't very beautiful. She wasn't hideous. Even if she wasn't hideous, right? She was average. What pulled him to her? He was cold, and that warmth made him warm up, and it opened him up to her. So that was another miracle. That's one of the miracles that Chachamim say. There was a lot of things that led to it. There was angels making her look beautiful and have this grace that she found with everyone, and that it was cold, so she entered his heart from warming him up at night. And even those who say that she was beautiful, that she was exceptionally beautiful, even those, that's let's say we follow that opinion. First of all, that's not what it says in the pasuk of why Achashverosh chose her. He didn't choose her because it doesn't say she was the most beautiful woman in the land. It says that she found grace and favor in his eyes. Let me show you the word. It says that he loved Esther, Mikol Nashim, from all the women. It doesn't say anything about her beauty, right? It doesn't say he fell in love with her because he looked at her face and she was gorgeous. It doesn't mention anywhere that she was beautiful. In fact, she didn't even make herself beautiful, right? All the other princesses, they put on this dress and then suddenly they're beautiful, right? They go from being in rags to riches. Esther didn't even want anything on her. She said, I don't want to be, like, I'm not trying to make myself appealing or beautiful for this person to save me, right? Esther was, it says, more than all of the other virgins, she was beautiful to him. She found chen v'chesed, right? Chen is not an outer beauty, it's an inner beauty, it's a grace, it's something that it's a radiation that emanates from you. And chesed is favor. She found kindness. Her kindness came out to him. How gentle she was. She was the kindest of all the women. She didn't care about her appearance. So it's the anti-fairy tale here. The message that we're giving our daughters, that the Torah is telling us through this story, and why Esther pushed for the Megillah to be printed. She said, we need our daughters to have a story that's not about your external beauty, that it shows that it has nothing to do with how you look. It is not about being the most fair of them all. It has to do with Hashem's plan for you, that your beauty comes from within, that if you're kind, that's what will find favor in people's eyes, is your beauty, inner beauty will come forth. The aura that you radiate to other people. If you're kind to people around you, everyone will be pulled in. Even the king Achashverosh, who has all these gorgeous women, there'll be nothing if you can radiate kindness from within. Could you imagine the difference in mental health that I would have had growing up if I'd heard that message, that what you look on the outside actually means nothing. There could be a million gorgeous girls, but if you radiate from within and your aura, that's what is beautiful. That's what is attractive to people. That's what's going to pull people towards you. We would have so much more self-confidence. We would spend so much less time obsessing over the things in our bodies that aren't perfect. I'm talking to myself here. Then even if Esther was picked and she's beautiful, right? And let's say Esther was beautiful and Achashverosh didn't pick her for her beauty, but she's still drawn to her and attracted to her. When Esther is in this distressful time, the anti-fairy tale here is that rather than waiting for a prince and Mordechai to come save her, she does the complete opposite. She says, I'm not waiting for no prince to come and sweep me off my feet and fall in love with my looks and save me. I'm going to turn to Hashem. I'm going to be the one to take charge of my own story. I'm not going to be a victim here. I'm not a victim in my story. I'm going to take charge and see what's needed of me to do. What do I need to do here? What's my message here? What's my work here? And she said, I'm going to take charge and use my position of power to pull out my power and instruct everyone else what to do. The prince is not saving me. I'm saving him. I'm saving his life and all the Jewish people. And the other anti-fairy tale message is that rather than the climax being that the prince and prince lived happily ever after in their own perfect life, that is like a selfish mindset, right? That like in many ways, it's like, okay, so you saved yourself, great, from the story, but that's fine, right? That's happy ending. But the true happy ending is not just when Esther's saved and everyone else dies, right? What about everyone else? What about all the other hungry people? What about other people that the evil queen is torturing, right? What about them? In this story, we see that Esther says, it's not only am I not going to wait for a prince to sweep me off my feet and save me from this horrible situation, from this evil king and Haman, I'm going to utilize my position here to see what's needed of me, and I'm going to save myself, but also first I'm going to save everyone else around me, right? I'm going to be the heroine that sacrifices herself for everyone else. Even though, and what to me struck me the most was like that the Megillah portrayed, that she wrote in her Megillah her own struggle. She was not afraid to write in her own story that at first she was terrified and said, I don't want to go in, I'm gonna die, right? She didn't make it sound like I'm just a hero and I was ready to sacrifice my life. She's like, no, I was terrified and I struggled, and that's okay, right? And I wasn't willing to do it at first, but after pushback from someone else, I was able to take it and internalize it and get through it and realize that this is my only chance of being like the person I'm meant to be, and this is why I'm put here. And to me, that's like so powerful that she's showing us her human struggles. She's not perfect. She's showing us in her own writing. And Esther wants this to be a story Esther pushed and pushed for this to be written, this Megillah to be written, even though there's pushback from the Chachamim and Mordechai to say, you don't have to write it down in a Megillah in the Torah, write it down. Why does it have to be included in the Torah, right? The Torah is good, right? We have lots of stories. She's like, yeah, but where's the story of that the Jewish girls and women will know to say that your potential is so much greater than you know, that you think your life is just living, your orphan girl living, she's like, you're an orphan girl living with her husband, having his life. You don't even know what potential could be there for you if you take your struggles and realize that this can be your greatest, something so great in you that you don't even know. You have the potential to save the entire Jewish nation. She said, I want to empower everyone to know that they can go from nothing to uncovering their greatest potential, to know that every single person could be a heroine, right? If it's not about you, it's about how you can service the world around you, how you can look to Hashem, and when you can open yourself up to Hashem to say that everything that Hashem put me through is for a higher reason, and we can tap into that, you are destined for so much greatness. She said, where's the story of the Jewish heroine that became the greatest leader that was able to uncover her power and her strength? We don't have that story yet, and that story needs to be part of the Torah. And that's why one of the reasons that Esther insisted that this story is there as a model for us. And for me, it's like so important to teach all Jewish girls the anti-fairy tale, right? And so this is one thing that I want to jump back to, that when Esther was at this point, she could have used her beauty, right? Ahasuerus clearly was attracted to her, right? He loved her. And if she was going in the normal narrative of a normal fairy tale, she would have made herself gorgeous, come into his palace, and he would have been like bedazzled by the sight of her, weak in the knees, and been like, okay, whatever you want, right? But Esther doesn't do that. She does like the opposite. She keeps doing the opposite of what every fairy tale we're expecting to do, right? We're expecting like the next part, Esther's gonna come before him and he's gonna be weak in his knees and say whatever you want. But she does the opposite. Instead of making herself beautiful, she fasts for 3 days, and how does someone look after they fast for 3 days? Their skin is dry, her lips are dry, she's malnourished, her hair is cracking, she's not eating, she doesn't look plump and beautiful, she's fasting and emaciated, she doesn't put on anything nice, she doesn't even put on a beautiful dress, she just comes her plain self without anything on and says to Ahasuerus, because, and this is to me like the craziest thing, right? Instead of her lying, she realizes, I'm not here because of my beauty. That's not why I'm here, right? Even if she was beautiful, this story is way beyond that, right? I should have been saved a long time ago. I'm here because Hashem put me here. So let me turn to the person who put me here and turn to him. And in this moment, I'm not going to rely on my own beauty, because this is not natural occurrence, even though you can look at it and say like the Megillah was the Hashem's hand in the Megillah was so hidden to reflect so many times to reflect what Esther felt. And I feel that, to me, it feels that Esther omitted Hashem's name in the Megillah, because we know that Megillah is the one sefer in the whole Tanakh doesn't have one mention of Hashem's name, to reflect how she felt in that dark space, that she felt that Hashem had forsaken her. She didn't feel Hashem revealed to her in any way. Hashem was hidden to her throughout the entire story. There was no point when they were like, oh, I see that this is like, I see this glimmer from Hashem, and Hashem is giving me a sign or message. There was no signs, there was no messages. She felt abandoned, broken, strung out to dry, and left out to dry by Hashem. She felt at the lowest she ever was. And she's reflecting the Megillah to say that this was not where, like in the Hanukkah story, where it was really tragic, but you saw these miracles along the way. You saw the mighty and the great and all these crazy stories along the way. There was nothing like that. There was just me alone feeling like Hashem had forgotten me, right? And that's how I felt at that time. And I got lost. Yeah, like the Holocaust. And in that darkest time, rather than saying, okay, clearly Hashem forsaken me, let me just rely on my beauty and what I can to save myself, because, they find that I'm Jewish, at least Ahasuerus won't let them touch me. Rather than doing that, she still chooses to search for Hashem in the darkness. And I'm getting chills just thinking about what you said about the mother and the sisters of the boys who were killed yesterday. They're in this dark time when Hashem took away innocent lives from them in the most brutal way possible. And rather than scream like, where is God? They're looking for God. They're continuing to search and find God and find Hashem and saying, this is Hashem, right? That is the miracle. That is really the miracle, the Purim story.
More so, they were thanking Hashem.
They were saying thank you to Hashem. It's not normal. So and that's like the craziest thing, because it's like we're saying this about Queen Esther 2,500 years ago, but this is not just a story of Queen Esther. This is the story that we live every single day, that now we're living. We don't feel and see Hashem in any way. We live in a world of olam, of helem, of Esther, of hiddenness. We don't see Hashem when those tragedies happen. There's no revelation, there's no sign, there's nothing. There's just emptiness and breathness and brokenness and heart-wrenching brokenness. And you just call out and say, Hashem, where are you? Why have you abandoned me? And the fact that as a nation that people continue, that women nowadays, right? Not Queen Esther. Queen Esther is not like not just a magical Navi Queen Esther, but regular people living in the darkest times of Golas, that we learned that now is the darkest time, that continue to do that. That's the miracle. The miracle of the Purim story to me that I see is that Esther continued to search for Hashem, and that she did not rely on herself, and she never thought and that even though Hashem was hidden from her in every way, she said, this is still Hashem, and I know Hashem is there somewhere in the darkness, and I'm going to find Hashem in this, and I'm going to turn to Hashem in this time. And instead of turning to my beauty, I'm just going to fast and daven to Hashem for 3 days. And I want the whole nation, instead of preparing for war, to just fast as well and daven for me. This fast day, interestingly enough, the Gemara says, happened not in Purim story. Do you know when it was? I've never heard this. It happened the day before Pesach. And you're not allowed to fast on Pesach. And that's why it says, Vaya'avar Mordechai, Vayas is everything she did. Vaya'avar, he went against halacha. He went against halacha for the time of need. She said, well, we're not going to have anyone to celebrate Pesach if you don't do this, because we need to turn to Hashem right now. And we need to fast. And fasting is a time when we could just focus on Hashem, right? Because we know how much food takes up of our time and thoughts and energy, because we spoke about that in Shvat. And so fasting was this time for her. She said, you're all going to fast and I'm going to fast. And he's like, okay, that's crazy because you have to go. But she's like, yeah, but this whole thing is crazy. This is not natural. And it's just all Hashem. And I need to turn to Hashem at this time and surrender everything. And that bittul that she had to surrender everything and all of her own thoughts and all of nature, and go completely above and beyond nature and just say, I'm turning to Hashem, and this is clearly Hashem with me. Sometimes when things get so dark, it's like this has to be Hashem, because like nothing could come up, nothing. There's no reason for it other than that we have to just trust that there's something greater, that this has to be a plan of Hashem, because how could this even happen? And so she trusted in Hashem, and through that, there's some crazy miracle. It says that also there was a malach with her that pushed Achashverosh's hand to extend her the scepter, and it was only 2 feet long, or 2 amos long, and it extended 12 amos long. So there was a lot of miracles happening there that were hidden in this story. But it really spoke to me to see that like Esther really felt forsaken, and that's why she didn't include Hashem in the Megillah. I mean, in my own, take it or leave it, in the way I feel. I'm sure there's much greater reasons that I don't know. And so we see this real heroine, and this is what the message that we want to tell our daughters, to ourselves, the daughters inside of us that we're growing up, to say that you're so much more powerful than you think, that you feel like you're an insignificant person, but you never know, right? You're going to be put in any situation and you never know the impact. Esther did not know when she was in that struggle that the entire millions of Jews would be saved because of her, and that probably the Jewish nation wouldn't exist today if not for her being put in a horrible raping marriage, in a marriage that was horrible. She did not think that, right? And so many times in our struggles, we don't think that because I'm in this situation, I could be affecting the entire future of the Jewish nation. We don't always get to see, and many times we don't get to see. And in fact, the craziest thing is that even in Esther's life, she wasn't a heroine at all. It wasn't like Esther was the hero of the story then, which is why it's so crazy that the Megillah is called after her name, because she was like consorting with the enemy. When she made a party, so they fasted for 3 days on Pesach, and then the next day Esther invites Achashverosh to a party. Fine, she's married to him. But then who does she invite to the party? Hitler. Imagine there's a Jewish woman who Eichmann forces to be with him, and then she's like, let me invite Hitler to the party too. The hate that the Jewish people had for her, the betrayal, right? They felt betrayed by her. She wasn't a heroine, even after, right? There's so much, she's the one sleeping with the enemy. Literally, they call it sleeping with the enemy. She's sleeping with the enemy. So as much as she sacrificed for the Jewish people, well, she wasn't beloved. She wasn't celebrated. She wasn't a heroine. And after the story, the Chachamim said, no, let's not write this all down and put it in the Torah. This happened, we survived. Let's just lay low and not make a big deal of it and just keep our heads down low and survive. And she has to spend the rest of her life at Achashverosh now to make sure that this doesn't happen again, to stay on his good favor, right? To keep this from happening again, this Holocaust and this killing. She stays with him every single day, and she influences him to have their son Daryavish rebuild the base of Mikdash. Because of her influence, her son with Achashverosh, that most opinions say is her son with Achashverosh, rebuilt the base of Mikdash. She didn't go back to her husband. She sacrificed everything, and she wasn't even celebrated for it. So you might live your whole life. The message is that not knowing the effect of your action, but that's okay, right? And you might have pain, but you can really affect your suffering by being in your moment and seeing what you can do in the situation. Not being the victim and not waiting to be saved, but saying and turning to Hashem constantly. By knowing that your worth is nothing to do with your external beauty, and your inner chesed and light will shine and affect other people, even the biggest Russia, more than all the beauty in the world that will come through. This is the message that we need to hear, and that you can be one smile person that has no skills and never been a leader, and that it will come out of you, and to know that it's in you, and you just have to be open to it. And that is the message that we want to share. And I'm going to end off with this thought that the Baal Shem Tov teaches. There's a pasuk that says that there's a halacha that says that anyone who reads the Megillah Lemafreya, which means backwards, there's a pasuk that says that anyone who reads the Megillah backwards is not Yotzeh. He's not Yotzeh in reading. Why would anyone read the Megillah backwards, right? Why would somebody want to read the Megillah backwards, right? That's such a ridiculous. And the Baal Shem Tov says that Lemafreya doesn't only mean backwards. It actually means if you read the Megillah backwards, as if it happened a long time ago, as if it's a backward story that happened many years ago to Esther and to Mordechai, to our ancestors. So these as a history book, you're not Yotze the Megillah, because we're not reading the Megillah as a history book. That's not why Esther pushed for the Megillah to be written and included in the Torah. The reason that Esther pushed is not that we read it as a history book. The reason that Esther wrote it is that we realize that we are as Queen Esther, that everyone's neshama. Queen Esther actually represents, and Kabbalistically, the neshama. And every time it says Hamelech and not the word Achashverosh, the Chamim say, the Kabbalists say to read it as the King Hashem. The story of Queen Esther is all of our stories of our neshama coming from the highest level, from perfection, from bliss, from an easy, chill life above, and being pushed and squished into situations that are so difficult, and that we can come out with it so much greater, even if we feel that Hashem is hidden along the way, even if we don't feel those revelations, and how we can come through it. So we read the Megillah. It's our own story that we're reading. We're connecting to our Esther inside of us. We're connecting to that hidden potential inside of us. And when we're banging out Haman, we're not booing Haman. Who cares? He's dead, right? We're not booing Haman on the gallows. We're booing the Haman and the Amalek inside of us. We said Amalek is doubt. We're booing the self-doubt inside of us, the doubt that tells us that we're not capable, that maybe this is not Hashem's plan for me. Maybe this is just coincidence. Maybe I'm not that great. Maybe I can't get through this, right? The doubt, the Debbie Downers, the doubt that we have in our greatness and our kochos and our capability to get through the situations that Hashem puts us in. We're stamping out Amalek. We're stamping out hatred in the world. We're stamping out all of our ego. We're stamping out all of the things that cover us. So when we're banging Amalek, we're banging out the Amalek inside of me. I'm saying, boo, get rid of all of the baggage, all of the trauma. I want to get rid of all of the things that cover up my essence, all of the things that are covering that we're to Megillah Esther. So we're reading Megillah Esther as a story that we're revealing the Esther inside of us. We're revealing the hidden Esther within us, and that we're stamping out Haman, and that's how you read Megillah, and then we're Yotzeh. So I'm wishing everyone a wonderful Purim.
Why is it a day of?
I'll do that in a minute, because whoever has to go, and then I'll do that. So I'm wishing everyone a wonderful Purim, that we can transform all of our pain into tremendous light, and that the moment that we can switch that, we shouldn't not need to have any more pain. We have enough pain. We've all been pushed through the ringer enough. We've been squished enough, and that we should not be challenged or squished in any way. That we should be able to tap into all of the light that we have, and just see tremendous revealed brachos. I just want to remind everyone that every year I share, and my mother told me that because Purim is a physical day and we celebrate in a physical way, it's a time to draw down buckets. It says that every minute of Purim, it's just 24 hours. Every minute of Purim is an opportunity to draw down buckets of brachos, physical brachos into our life, and shefa. And that's why it's what we should be doing on Purim is saying Tehillim. I would say this parak, Eli Lama Zaftani, right? Parak Hafez, for me, like that's what I'd never heard of that. That's Queen Esther's parak. But saying Tehillim, and as a vessel to just bring down, because saying Tehillim and giving tzedakah, so give as much tzedakah as you can to make it a vessel to draw down brachos, because we learned that brachos, the reason we make brachos every day, even though Hashem already decided for us how much wealth we're going to have at Rosh Hashanah, is because we need to draw it down. Baruch means to draw down, to pull it down into our life. So on Purim, there's so much potential, but we need to do things to pull it down in our life. So we give giving money to poor people. It's about the repetition of action. So give as many times as you can. Go on websites and donate. Give to people. Give to, if you want to bring to Rabbi Shlomi, we give physically to people and families in need on Purim. Or you could also just keep donating as many times as you can, and then saying Tehillim. And the Yitzhahar works so hard on Purim to take us away and distract us from the potential and holiness of the day and how much shefa we can drive into lives. And the distractions are like being obsessed with like our costume and the themes and our mishloach manos and sending mishloach manos. You know what mishloach manos was meant to be? It was meant to be potluck. It was meant to be that no one has to worry about the Suda because you bring two foods, you bring two foods, and we all eat together,
Can we
right?
do that again?
Yes, I'm gonna reinstate it.
No, it's just so ironic that the distractions are
Yeah,
always
the
physical,
distractions are
gashmias
physical.
things.
The distractions are not bad things, but they're hidden. We call it the Chassidish Mishloach Manos, the Chassidish Yetzer Hara. That he's like, give more. It's like in the name of being good. It's like make a fancier Shalach Manos. Make sure you give everybody. You're missing, and all that's to distract us from the potential of the day. And we get carried away by details that are not important. By making, I do this, like the label being perfectly tied on and making it look nice, so it has to have the description of the Shalach Manos on it, making sure that everyone got it. Rather than, I wish the Shalach Manos was, you make two foods and bring it to someone's house, and then we all eat together. Imagine, it's literally in the pictures of the olden days. It was a family walking over with a tray of food to someone's house. Shalach Manos, Mishloach Manos means bringing food to celebrate together, to eat together, to have achdus and unity, because there's so much joy in celebrating together. It's not about packaging things nicely and making it look nice so I could seem like cute and creative, and I came up with the most cute creative thing. That's the distractions of the Yetzer Hara to take us away from that. So, if we can minimize that, if you want to give donation cards this year, every year I print donation cards, and you could send digital ones. So you can give everybody a donation card that says that you donated to Chabad in their honor, and then put a chocolate bar in it, so it's not like they don't like ruin their day. Because nothing's worse than you giving a master chocolate and it's like, here, we donated someone in you. But at least if there's a really yummy chocolate bar, I'm taping chocolate bars onto it this year. You can also give someone a digital card that we made with like music, but like focus on what's important, right? Give money to people who need it. Don't spend your money on fancy shalach manos, and do those things to draw down those brachas into your life. And may we only see revealed good and tremendous, tremendous brachas for everybody who needs in any way. L'chaim.